Hello, team. It's time for the Daily Detangler. Hey there. I was toasting yesterday, and also had a brief discussion with Catalyst, and he was talking about the idea of flow in his whiteboard, and the idea of creating flows and paying attention to flows was something that I was kind of, I guess, tangled about, because I hadn't really thought about flows in terms of the, I guess, interrelated parts view of work, or teaming, or building together, or creating. I mean, I know a team can work well together, but I was curious about the concept of some sort of flow state as a team. So I wanted to, learn by doing and apply some of my detangling lens to try to think about flow and how I can try to figure out how to get more flow in a team environment. That led me to think about the systems that we're operating within and the idea of the collective. What is the collective? So Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi wrote a book called Flow. That book, I liked it a lot. He basically talks about an individual reaching a flow state. So individually, I have achieved flow, and maybe you have too. He talks about when you have high skills and you're engaged in challenging complexity, you can engage and you reach a state of intrinsic motivation and flow where you basically lose track of time. And I've definitely had that happen in a lot of the work of trying to figure things out and working in the go-to-customer view, and even pulled all-nighters and things. And I like the work, and I'm motivated by exploring these areas and thinking things through and engaging in the debate and learning. And the thing about it is, if you look around it, there are two, he talks about basically two pieces of information here. One is, arousal, and the other one is control. The idea of control, I'm definitely aligned to, and trying to stay and sometimes be controlling, and then emotionally getting kind of agitated or maybe emotive about things. But those things end up being close to this flow state that looks like an ice cream cone for some reason. But people love the control state because they think they can control things, and then people don't like to worry and anxiety. Yet I find myself there a lot in this kind of space. I don't get necessarily bored, etc. So this was an interesting concept, and I asked myself, well, that's great. This flow state can be achieved, and in sports, I had flow. I've had it when I was writing, reading, etc. Even driving, sometimes you can zone out. But individually, having flow is one thing. But can a system experience some sort of flow state? And I thought that was worth exploring, because what we're trying to do is create a new ecosystem of go-to-customer, but also on the team, our team working well together. What does that look like, and how do we build that out? So what I did was I thought about it from a perspective of the ecosystem of the environment and what that means. So when I look at this, there's this energy field around it, and energy here, the sun creates and provides energy to plants, plants can break down, plants can be food for herbivores can be food for carnivores, things decay, worms and other grubs and things can eat that stuff, and there's energy conversion that happens here, and there's some, in some way, a flow of energy from the sun all the way through these things and back onto us, and that's where we get our food from, and from our energy. But that the kind of energy that would lead to, some sort of flow, where a team works together and achieves breakthroughs in time, as we've been talking about in the conundrums, as we work through and create curiosity and explore innovation and embrace complexity. How does the rest of the world kind of melt away? And this doesn't seem to provide that, so this is a interesting, but not necessarily 100% relatable to the field that we're studying of the ecosystem. So then I thought about, well, what about like a family unit? We're all part of a family, and we've probably, if you think about it, have families that get into a state of flow where they're having the chatter and the back and forth, and then maybe somebody awkwardly doesn't necessarily fit into that, and everybody notices, or says they say something out of place and everybody notices. And there's this like collective flow that happens in norms and the banter and the inside jokes and things like that. But when somebody doesn't necessarily fit into that, it can be disruptive because everybody's interrelated and the collective experience is impacted by people on the court and not. And that's where I think this on the court analogy comes from, is this idea of a flow state for a team. And I've seen that with a family getting into this kind of flow state. They don't call it on the court. They just would say probably it's somebody who's in the family. So when we ground ourselves to the norms and the language or the systems and processes of a team, what does that look like? And it makes me think about the orb and the interdependence between all these things. And getting on the court and reaching that flow state of having unspoken rules, or having principles that we're all following, and getting into that view of everybody's in a flow state and losing track of time and building together and engaging in curiosity and having fun. That's this great vision. Is, if you've ever had flow individually, like what if the orb could help us have flow as a team? The interconnections, the relationships, the interactions we have, the consequences, and what is that energy among and between these things? And then how does that work? And can it experience flow? Can the orchestrated orb have some sort of flow where it just works and people are participating, processes are working, information is flowing, technology is helping, right? It just it seems like that's possible, but what does that look like? And what actually creates that flow, right? And I was thinking about that, like, what do I have a role in that? And what is that look like? And I think about the Dr. Octopus view of the orb and trying to control that, and does that reach that state? So one of the things that I remember is Scott and I had done this podcast with systems thinking, and it was this idea of mental models. And I thought about, well, what if my mental model is not necessarily, aligned to the orb? Am I embracing the orb as a mental model for understanding the complexity and also figuring out how to get into a flow state with the team, right? Assuming that can happen, right? As a soccer player, I believe it can, and I've seen it happen on sports. But in knowledge creation or intellectual property creation, it's been tough in all settings to have a team reach some sort of flow. So that's an interesting thing. And I was like, well, what is that flow state? So let me go show the podcast for a second. we were talking to Jerry about, and this Harvard professor, about how does he introduce and talk about systems thinking. And it's this concept of all the interrelated parts, and then he does talk about the idea of what he calls, and what's known in the space as mental models. And there's mental models that can be developed to understand and make sense out of things. So, like for example, I'm gonna go into my archive here. I wrote a book a long time ago on the 10 steps to sales, and it was the 10 steps to sales, but it was the 10 steps to build your own philosophy of sales. It wasn't like a hardcore, here's how you close kind of book. It was about helping people be successful in that. So I'm going to pull this up, and this is my this is my thinking at the time, where I developed a kind of a systems thinking view of sales, right? So, and I talked about it in terms of, these are the 10 steps: have a sales mindset, know your job and your role, develop habits, be efficient, be effective, understand how people buy, understand the sales process. And then number 6 here was create your personal sales system. So what I meant by that was thinking about that. And Random House Dictionary defines a system as an ordered and comprehensive assembly of facts, principles, doctrines, a combination of things and parts that form a complex whole. So that's the simple view. But to think about the complex whole, Jerry talks about mental models. And the mental model is a picture. So what I did was I said, well, here's one model. I take inputs, I do stuff, and I build trust. And that's a simple mental model of selling that a lot of people espouse and say, well, understand your market, do a bunch of activity, and then boom, you have trust. You can also say, well, sales is an assembly line where, there's the market needs, and I do these activities, and then I build loyal customers, and it's an assembly line on a conveyor belt. And I can think about it that way. I can also think about it as a manufacturing plant. I take raw materials, I do my thing, I do some value add, and I'm working with all these people. I sell it, I deliver it, and I build customers. So I can think about a distribution of value mental model, and how value is created with mental model of I take raw materials and create value by working with all these people, and at some point I talk to them and deliver that value. I can also think of it in terms of a helicopter. So this mental model lets you go above it and say, okay, let me take 50,000 foot view and think about the ecosystems impacted by these various functions, and how would I bring them all together as a salesperson? Because I need to connect the dots and think about that. So, and then a machine, it has a bunch of gears. There's customer needs, and it goes through here, and all the gears turn, and everybody does their thing, and boom, customers come out the end, right? So these are mental models that I just try to keep them simple. And then there's one that, sales and value is like a cell. It's organic. You let the good stuff in, and you keep the bad stuff out. And that systems and conversations is how you keep the bad stuff out and let the good stuff in. And sales is like a living organism. It's like a cell. So these are just me, playing around with the mental model to think about how sales operate. This was, a long time ago, and I've evolved my thinking, but, a mental model helps you see the big picture. A mental model helps you focus on what you can control, while also working with and understanding the larger system. You can see yourself within the model, but also you can see others, and then you can explore it. And that's the key of a systems thinking. It's very much about exploring and observing. So these are concepts that led me to say, sales funnel's dead, and it's not about this linear thing anymore. It's about the ecosystem, and you need to think like that as a seller. So these are examples of systems thinking what I've found is because it's in the area of sense making and making sense of the world around us and how we view that and how we develop our perspective of the complexity, a lot of times it's uniquely personal about how people view this, and everybody has their own perspective. So a mental model that works for me and really resonates with me may not work for others. So we don't end up in a space where we have the same unified mental model. We end up with a space of we're all using our own mental models to come up with our own sense of the sales ecosystem. But by doing that, at least we're talking about things that are in the same zip code of a system, instead of, well, it's just a numbers game, and people discounting it as it's just all on sales skills. It's just a sales skills numbers game.
So we're getting away from being silo oriented, by doing
So that becomes a key characteristic of a good orchestrator that then is able to bridge people's mental models, right? Because sales teams definitely have one view of the world and marketing teams have another view of the world, and they're often in conflict, right? Mm-hmm. And
that's
fine,
right.
We can let them be as they are, but an orchestrator is able to.
I spliced in here, we had a discussion about this idea of a mental model when I had a group of 2 or 3 people, and I thought this would be helpful.
You tie the numbers game mentality to the, I don't know, look how pretty my website is mentality.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So, and everybody, and then understanding that everybody's going to have their own mental model, and that's okay. It's totally okay for that everybody to have their own mental model. So in that view of like a mental model, when I think about a team, and I think about trying to contribute to that team and make toast, for example, or find and identify or make an observation, I can inject energy into our team, and that's a different type of energy, because the mental model that I have of a team is built on this idea of inputs and outputs, and my contribution creates outputs. That's a different type of mental model than what we're doing here, which is the idea that the fuel that contributes to creation of knowledge is ideas and toast. And that's a different type of mental model. So when I think about that, and I think about the orb, and I think about the idea of embracing the new mental model, there seems to be these attributes that I can latch onto. Like, for example, am I making observations? Am I understanding? And am I sharing perspective? Am I toasting? And do I have an ability to frame out clearly what the issues are? And am I learning by doing? Am I taking action? I still have yet to discover what that type of energy creates for me personally to its fullest potential. I've seen little sparks there, but I haven't seen how the engine works for me yet. But I see that it's possible, and I see that by setting little tiny goals, like, for example, can I toast every day, can create a positive influence in energy. So, but what is the mental model for this idea of a team, and how does a team create team flow, right? Individuals can have flow, as I shared, but like, I'm really like wondering, like, what is the flow of a team? And I thought, what's the closest to that? And the thing that popped into my head, a little bit tongue in cheek, was a brain. And the brain has all these synapses firing and all of these nodes and interconnections that happen, and it creates energy. Electrical impulses go through our brain. So what if the team could do that? What would that look like? And this is intriguing, because to me, what I've come to try to wrestle with is, you know, the idea of being individually smart is completely different than being team smart. You know, the smartness that the world needs today is a collective smartness, collective intelligence. You know, cities that work, spaceships and rockets that work, you know, industries that are evolving and creating experiences. This is this idea that emergence is coming out of somewhere, and it's because there's a collective intelligence that happens when people come together, as opposed to an individual on their own. And it's not about this me being like the smartest person in the room. It's like, how do I help the collective? And that collective, you know, can I inject energy and create energy? And can I think about the team as a brain working all together, and so that we can be collectively intelligent or collectively smart? And, you know, that's this idea that we are able to figure out anything and handle anything that comes our way and create something from nothing. That's a pretty smart idea, to say we can create something from nothing. So this idea that, what if I was part of a brain? What would I need to do to plug into that brain? What would that look like? And that energy I create there is this idea that, you know, my perspective provides the energy that flows us together. So if that collective intelligence is the smartness that the world needs, myself has to give way to the team view. I have to become the collective intelligence, not the individually intelligent. And that's the, you know, what I've talked about in previous detanglers, of moving from me to we. So what have I learned when I think about and I draw out the idea of, you know, a model about thinking about us as a brain? And, you know, the first thing is not trying to necessarily figure that out, but just to reflect on, what have I learned about what's worked to plug into our collective intelligence? And one is having this new commitment to learn by doing. You know, I probably had that when I was in kindergarten, but renewing the commitment to learning by doing, and having a deep commitment to learn because of I'm doing the activity and the action. It's not learning so that I can act, it's acting and therefore I learned. So, you know, that's key. And that's part of tapping into the collective intelligence, and being part of the collective intelligence. And then there's a humility aspect. I have to be prepared to be wrong. The reason why I ended up on mental models is I have to think about my own mental models, and what if my mental models are wrong? I showed you mental models from 10 years ago or whatever. Look how basic those were versus the mental models we probably would have now individually. The reason why I showed that was I'm, you know, part of the collective intelligence. I have to be humble enough to realize that I'm part of the solution or part of the problem, right? And that's you know, the mental model that I have might be wrong, and I need to you know, explore that and publish it and share it, so that I can get other people's perspective. Which is the third thing, is this idea of perspective. Having a party in my head might be the safest thing to do, but getting 2 or 3 other people to, you know, engage together is a whole other ball of wax. And working with others, you know, is kind of, you know, it's not easy, and not easy for me in particular. And so this idea of this system that we're operating within, and the collective intelligence being part of the brain, what is that, and how do I lean into other people's perspectives and see something together that I wouldn't be able to see individually? And that's what I've learned. I don't know exactly how to do all that, but I think the idea of part of the brain building collective intelligence with the, you know, ability to morph and change and figure things out is critical. And, you know, I'm exploring that and trying to detangle myself further from thinking about the idea of creating something by, you know, sheer force of will, to creating something, learning by doing, approaching it with humility and gathering perspectives, and wondering if that is what creates a collective intelligence of a team. So I'm going to try to find out, or at least explore that. So that's me putting myself out there again and thinking about sharing some ideas around a mental model. I had some issues with technology, so I'm splicing stuff in. So if it was a little bit choppy, sorry about that. But, you know, when I tried to do this detangler, it was around this idea that perhaps I'm, you know, thinking about things wrong, or not necessarily in the most optimal way. And how would I publish that and detangle myself from that? And I really like this idea of, you know, the collective and the collective intelligence, smartness that we can create together. So thanks for your time, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.